Good morning, everybody. Snakezilla here again. What have we got on this board? AG is number 1, PJR is number 2. And it's another one of those very light boards for some reason. Again, I think maybe it's because it's early morning here in Australia. Yeah, so maybe on this particular server, there are just not that many people awake yet. But anyway, that's fine. Probably makes things a little easier to talk. And what I was going to say, I had another thought. So yesterday I started talking again about basically focus on tasks. And in particular the default mode network in the brain, which is the piece of neural circuitry, as I understand it, that sends people into this state of blissful focus on tasks. And I did look up the other network as well. Sorry, when I say blissful focus, I mean sort of more wandering focus. So it's the network that's responsible for behaviours which are sort of more relaxed and automatic, where you're not really paying too much attention to what you're doing, which is usually, I reckon, is activated when I am talking in terms of how I play this game. So I'm not really thinking about how I'm playing. I'm just in the background quietly collecting food, usually along a trail. But anyway, the other network was the task positive network, and that is responsible for more of a mindful focus on things. God, I tell you what, I think it's because I play this game using a keyboard. I find it difficult to steer the snake when I'm going quickly. So if I try and collect a bunch of food, I usually go off that kind of trail very easily. But I spoke to a friend yesterday by phone. So Big Snake's just killed himself here. And this friend mentioned that they had a diagnosis for ADHD, which is not uncommon. I think I have heard that ADHD is rather overdiagnosed, and indeed I have a diagnosis for ADHD, which I've always thought it was suspiciously easy, the way I had my diagnosis, which was to sit down with a psychiatrist and essentially just fill out a form. It was form filling, and then the psychiatrist reviewed that form, asked a couple of questions, took what I said on oath, and then I had a diagnosis, and they collected $500 for the privilege. So he walked away with a barrel load of money, I walked away with a diagnosis for ADHD, and yeah, I'm not saying whether the outcome's correct or not, but yeah, I expected more. I expected, especially considering that for most people with ADHD, you are prescribed regulated drugs. I thought there would be more checks and balances around how they make these diagnoses, but there wasn't. But anyway, that wasn't really the purpose of why I brought that up. ADHD, I did bring up though, because it relates to what we were talking about yesterday, which is the... Oh, you bastard, yeah. Okay, let's try again. Coming back to the two neural circuits, we were talking about the default mode network, and the other one, by the way, was the task positive network. I think I mentioned it yesterday, but I mentioned TPN, but I couldn't remember what it stood for. I just remember hearing TPN, but task positive network. So essentially, the way I understand it is the way they work. So the default mode network is the part of the brain. There's a bunch of areas of the brain that work together to send you into this sort of relaxed state of actually it's more non-focus. So when you're not really concentrating on what you're doing, or in this kind of, I was going to say zombie-like state of not really concentrating. Kind of what I'm doing right now with this game. I'm not really focusing on what I'm doing, and I think that's when I tend to zone out and follow small trails of food. I'm not really thinking about the game. Sort of my mind is wandering and thinking about other day-to-day things, maybe work, maybe other things, maybe food, what I'm going to have for dinner. I'm not really concentrating on the game. And what often happens, I find, is that I can build up quite a large score on this game by being in that sort of default mode network, because what happens is you don't pick up that many points by following these small trails of food, but you do stay on the board for longer because you're taking less risks, and you become this opportunistic snake where every now and again you will come across big kills on the board. So every now and again you can pick up enormous amounts of food and luck out a little bit. But yeah, the other more focused way of thinking is via the task positive network, which uses different areas of the brain. I won't attempt to name them, but you can look them up. So they work together to make sure that you're more focused and deliberate on tasks. And yeah, my guess, my hypothesis is that when I am using that task positive network playing this game, my goals are very different. My goals are to kind of become the number one snake. I'm very deliberate about the way I play. I probably then tend to become the hunter and go after snakes and try and kill the snakes and get the food. But by doing that, I take on more risk. So I tend to not last as long. And again, this is, I've said this a few times before, that this game is symbolic of life itself. You take more risks in life, you're probably not going to survive as long as someone who takes less risks, someone that's probably more inclined to sit at home reading or gardening, is probably likely to live longer than someone that, I don't know, they enjoys going out, riding horses, racing cars, climbing, taking on high-risk activities that require more sort of focus. well, require the, I'm going to get wrapped here. No, I'm not. Okay. Yeah, require the task positive network. But what I was saying, yeah, so this ADHD thing, it just made me think, because I was speaking to someone yesterday, but so people with ADHD, well, let's just say the way a normal, inverted commas, normal, what is normal? I don't think any of us are normal, are we? But let's just say the way the brain or the circuits of a normal person works, as I understand it, is those two networks, when one is on, very roughly, when one is on, the other one is off. So you're either relaxed, default mode network, sort of not really concentrating too much on what you're doing, or oh, that's handy, you're using the task positive network to concentrate on things. And yeah, so Andrew Huberman, I don't know if you guys listen to him, he's very good. He talks about those two networks behaving in a sort of seesaw fashion. When one is on, the other one is off, and vice versa. Whereas people with ADHD, again, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, there may be inaccuracies in what I'm saying, but people with ADHD struggle to regulate that sort of seesaw inverse correlation of the activation of those circuits. And I think you'll find, or not you'll find, but I think they've proven, even when you're saying that people with ADHD have problems with the two networks being activated at the same time. And that made me think that with gaming could be a really bad idea for people with ADHD. Not in terms of what the game is doing to your brain, but what the game is doing to your time. Because if you're struggling to regulate the activation of these two neural networks, then what it essentially means, perhaps, and this is just my hypothesis, is that your task positive network is telling you concentrate on playing this game, or concentrate on the task, which is, say, becoming the #1 snake. And at the same time, you've got the default mode network telling you relax into that task. Which means, perhaps, again, this is my hypothesis, how do you get out of that state? How do you get out of thinking that that's what you need to do? If you are concurrently in this sort of zombie-like relaxed state where you're finding it very difficult, actually not even finding it difficult, but you just don't know that you need to sort of almost order yourself to come out of that task positivity. And you can get stuck then, surely, on this task that you're enjoying. And that is perhaps mediated by something else, which would be worth talking about in another session. And again, this is just me riffing, by the way. I'm not an expert on any of this stuff. It's just stuff I've sort of heard about. Dopamine. So playing these games triggers a dopamine response. And dopamine, as I understand it, I'm going to have to look this up. Maybe I'll look it up before another video, so not giving you, so that I'm not being inaccurate in what I'm saying. But dopamine is a molecule which is synthesized under certain conditions and is responsible for the brain's pleasure and reward response. So playing a game like this will trigger the release of more dopamine, which probably makes you want to do it even more. So what I'm saying is that if you've got ADHD, you're already struggling to contend with two networks in your brain that don't know how to regulate one another, and you've got heightened dopamine release. Essentially, you've got no hope. You've got no hope of, well, I shouldn't say no hope, but it's even more difficult for you to stop sort of addictive behaviours. So it's just food for thought, again.